have joining me Major Mohammed Ali Shah on the broadcast. Thank you for joining us this morning. So we're talking about these killings that have happened in Bucha. Now, on one side, Ukraine saying that it's a massacre and that hundreds have been killed and it's become a ghost town now. But Russia, on the other hand, saying that it's staged. Russia claiming that not a single local has been hurt. What do we make of these developments?
Well, Aarti, there is a lot of information warfare going on at the same time, and when such killings happen of civilians and this kind of massacre takes place, it is very, very unfortunate. It is really, it's something which was uncalled for. This whole thing could have been avoided. It wasn't meant to be. But unfortunately, the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia also are paying the price for it. It is, you know, as is a very famous saying which we learned during our training in the army, which is, the more you sweat in peace, the less you would bleed at war. So India also was a threat. We also were a threat by our not so friendly neighbors from the west, Pakistan, and from the east, China. But what did we do? We prepared ourselves, we strengthened our borders, we trained ourselves, we went ahead and procured the S-400 from Russia, despite the fact that we were under threat of having sanctions, like the way Turkey had sanctions before that. And US had given us subtle hints that they would sanction us. We should not go ahead with these kind of strategic weapons. But yet we went ahead. What did Ukraine do? Ukraine depended on a triangle with Latvia, Poland, Ukraine. They depend on the EU, on the NATO, of which they are not even a member of. So it is very sad. A true soldier fights not because he hates what is ahead of him, but because he loves what is behind him. So it's really sad. And when these killings happen in Bucha, it is really very unfortunate. And you know, it is, as President Zelensky has reached out to the whole world almost, and he says that now you all better speak up, whatever support you can give us in whatever little way is enough.
Absolutely.
But you know, and he, including, look at the desperation, he reached out to Imran Khan. He had a telephonic conversation with Imran Khan just a couple of days back, who is not sure whether he would be there in the government or not, who wasn't sure, whose government himself was being rattled. So this shows the kind of desperation that President Zelensky has reached to, and my heart goes out to the Ukrainians and to the Russians, to the humanity overall, who all are dying. Because at the end of the day, a war is something where young people who do not know each other, who fight with each other, end up killing each other on the behest of senior people who know each other, who hate each other, but who do not kill each other. And again, talking about Bucha, at the end of a war, what happens? A mother waits for a son, a father waits for a son, a family waits for their loved one to come back. A small child waits. It is the politicians who shake hands at the end of the day. So when they have to shake hands, because this too shall pass, even the war will come to an end at some time, right? Then the politicians would shake hands. So why go in for war? And the whole purpose of a war is so that we can maintain peace at the end of the day. And when the whole purpose of war is peace, then why do we go in for such an unnecessarily evil? And it takes the economy and the human lives so many decades behind. As Leo Tolstoy once said, being peaceful is better than being right. And when this kind of an invasion happens by Russia, of course, the fingers point toward Russia. What they are doing is totally unjustified. But let me tell you, Aarti, I mean, more sanctions on Russia from the West will not stop them, will not deter what Russia has gone on to do. And now it's come to a time where it's gone too far, it's gone a bit too far. Now if President Zelensky turns around and backs out, the Ukraine will tell him, then why did you get so many people killed?
Exactly. Right. Major Shah, now let me first show these visuals that are on our screen, in fact, of the ground reality that is there in Ukraine. Now, pictures can't lie, although Russia calls it staged. Here is a satellite image of the mass graves. As you can see, here's a church in Ukraine. Behind that, we see these mass graves of the people that have been killed. Of course, Ukraine says hundreds have been killed, hundreds of residents being killed, but still finding bodies is what the foreign minister of Ukraine is saying. Now, he says that, you know, they're still gathering for bodies. They've killed over millions. He calls it a massacre. In fact, Ukraine is calling it a massacre. On the other hand, Russia saying that it is all staged. But here you can see the mass graves of the people. Now, this is in fact a satellite image that we've obtained. As you can see, if I can just zoom out here, you see how in the middle, in the neighborhood, as Ukraine calls it, a ghost town, behind the church, we see these mass graves. A very disheartening image, in fact, Major Shah, to see the killings of so many innocent people. At the end of the day, you know, whether Russia says it's staged, no matter what Ukraine is saying, at the end of the day, over hundreds of people have been killed and their bodies been buried. Now, these graves can't lie. What can, in fact, the world do now? They have had several rounds of talks and mediations done by Israel. But what next? How do we solve this issue? You know, although the world will move on after a point, and like you said, the war will come to an end, but after how many deaths? You know, it cannot be too late.
You're 100% right, and it makes so much of sense over here, you know. Yes, it is, and Israel, Naftali Bennett, he tried his best. He was to come to India as well. Unfortunately, he got COVID, so he could not, just 2 days back, so he could not really, his visit was all planned and we were all looking forward to it. Few countries have come forward to talk peace, India being one of them. There's Turkey, France, Israel, but that's about it. The Western powers, I would say, they are adding fuel to the fire. Right now, by supplying armed ammunition and support to Ukraine to defend themselves, well, they are adding fuel to the fire. Rather, they should just say, listen guys, okay, Aarti, if you witness a fight between two individuals, what do? You will try your best to separate them. Do not go and encourage and cheer for the other person and make the other person and provoke the other person furthermore. You will not do that. No person, no sane person will do that. But it is, I will not say defending that Western powers are giving armed equipment and war equipment to Ukraine to defend themselves. Well, they are only adding fuel to the fire. Rather, they should be encouraging talks. The kind of energy they are investing right now in helping Ukraine by providing firepower, that kind of energy, even half that kind of energy, not half, even half that energy, they could have spent in trying to make President Putin understand. He will not understand through sanctions, but then they can make use of the help of psychologists or whatever innovative method they can take of.
And in fact, the message to America is very clear at this point. Also, what we're learning is that Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, made a surprise appearance at this year's Grammy Awards. Now, he also used the platform to share a video message with the people of America. Let's listen into what he said.
The war. What's more opposite to music? The silence of ruined cities and killed people. Our children draw swooping rockets, not shooting stars. Over 400 children have been injured and 153 children died. And we'll never see them drawing. Our parents are happy to wake up in the morning in bomb shelters, but alive. Our loved ones don't know if we will be together again. The war doesn't let us choose who survives and who stays in eternal silence. Our musicians wear body armor instead of tuxedo. They sing to the wounded in hospitals, even to those who can't hear them, but the music will break through anyway. We defend our freedom to live, to love, to sound. On our land, we are fighting Russia, which brings horrible silence with its bombs, the dead silence. Feel the silence with your music. Feel it today to tell our story. Tell the truth about the war on your social networks, on TV. Support us in any way you can, any but not silence. And then peace will come. To all our cities, the war is destroying. Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Volnovakha, Mariupol, and others, they are legends already. But I have a dream of them living and free, like you on the dreams day.
Right, now Zelensky, Major Shah, is in fact calling to action, asking people to not be silent. Now he says, you know, take to social media, pressurize the Russian government. Now, whether the citizens of the world do that or not, countries definitely being silent doesn't work. And like you said, as the United States also takes sort of a different approach to it, India has been batting for peace talks, but the US, you know, adding fuel to the fire, like you said. Now, the time has come to not provoke and start, in fact, pushing more peace talks. But, you know, in the midst of these peace talks, around 6 rounds of talks have happened already, over that, in fact. And still, such a massacre, as Ukraine calls it, has happened.
Aarti, you know, President Zelensky has been an actor, and he, of course, he has his connections, and he went and gave this pre-recorded video at the Grammys. But will that help? Will standing ovation from the West, from the US Congress, where he gives a virtual webinar and addresses them, they stand up and they applaud him? Will that help? Will that save lives of people in Ukraine? People dying over there? No. Will, again, it is such a horrible thing. I'll tell you a small personal experience. A war hero returns after winning a war. And he's greeted by shutterbugs, by the media. They are all asking him, sir, now that you have done the enemy, how do you feel about it? Because both the countries are making claims, right, that they have killed so many troops, so many people here, there. They have destroyed so many of their vehicles, their aircraft. Well, the war hero says, I have just buried my best friend and I have come.
Right.
That is how I feel. So that is how terrible a war is. So now, what actually should be the peace has to be the only priority, because, we never know. Russia is capable of doing anything. They are capable of going to any extent.
Right.
President Putin, who was a lieutenant colonel in the KGB and a spy, we don't know what's happening in a spy's mind. God forbid, what if he decides tomorrow, because he's cornered, right? Japan, when it was cornered in the 40s, they bombarded Pearl Harbor, and they had heavy price to pay for it. Of course, there was bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which they are paying for till today. What if Russia decides to go nuclear, God forbid, and they are quite capable of doing it?
Right. Right, let's hope that that doesn't happen and that we deter, in fact, nuclear war, but more talks are probably the way to do that. Thank you, Major Shah, for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this story. Now we shift our focus, in fact, to Sri Lanka, where another and a different type of crisis is going on. Now, amid the economic crisis, we're getting some breaking news information from Sri Lanka. Let's have a look. News coming in from Sri Lanka that Sri Lanka is set to have a new cabinet amidst the worst economic crisis. And of course, this comes after the Sri Lankan cabinet resigned en masse overnight. Of course, this bars the Prime Minister and President of Sri Lanka, but the entire cabinet has resigned. After this, we're learning that Sri Lanka is going to get a new cabinet amid the crisis. All right, I still have Major Shah joining me on the broadcast. Major Shah, what we're learning is that, of course, after the en masse resignation of the Sri Lankan cabinet, it's going to get a new cabinet. This comes amid the economic crisis. Now, will this new cabinet be able to mitigate the economic crisis, that the worst, in fact, that Sri Lanka has faced in decades?
Sri Lanka made the mistake of making friends with China and taking heavy loans from China. As a result,
absolutely,
they could not really repay back their loans and they had to put their port. So China has taken over an entire port, an entire harbour from Sri Lanka on 99-year lease. India, in fact, sent out a bailout in February and March by providing $2.4 billion to Sri Lanka. So yes, with a change of government in Sri Lanka, well, I don't know how much it will help, but yes, most certainly it can be tried, because people are protesting against President Rajapaksa over there big time, and it was turning violent, and there was a major law and order situation in Sri Lanka. There was scarcity of energy, of power, 13 hours of power cut. Energy, there was shortage of fuel, there was shortage of milk. People didn't even have a single paracetamol, a single drug over there. So troubled times, yes, but yes, the whole world is going to support Sri Lanka. They want Sri Lanka to come out of this crisis for humanity's sake. And Sri Lanka, which was a very sought after tourist destination not very long ago. I have personal friends. My sister went to Sri Lanka just recently, just before the pandemic broke in.
Right.
So, yes, with the change of government, I really do not know how far it can go to, but it is what they need right now is support from the international community.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for joining us.